I thought probably, to be honest with you, there was a lack of allyship at times in my life, and that's why I felt like it was needed more than ever.
Hello, my LGBTQs, and welcome back to another episode of A Jaded Gay. I'm Rob Lovelace, and today I am a non-jaded gay because I did a little retail therapy. So lately, I don't know, I've just been feeling a little frumpy. I've just been wearing the same sweatsuits over and over because it's winter. I haven't left my house too much. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm doing my laundry, obviously. I just have 5 sweatsuits to get me through the week. But yeah, I just felt kind of like, eh. And then I started watching the new season of Queer Eye last night. I know I'm way behind, but really it just kind of inspired me to want to dress up a little bit and feel a little bit more, inspired in my wardrobe. But at the gym this morning, instead of doom scrolling on Instagram, I went on to Macy's and I just, checked out all the different men's fashion there. And I bought myself a cardigan and a couple undershirts for that, and then a couple tank tops for the summer. And not workout tank tops, but kind of more fashionable tank tops. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Like I said, these guys on Queer Eye, they're really kind of inspiring me to step up my fashion game. So I'm trying to model some of their looks, but who knows, I might just fall flat on that. Anyway, from style tips to allyship, today I am very excited to welcome another special guest who's going to talk to us all about LGBTQ plus civil rights and how we can engage our allies. And this topic is more important than ever, just as you've seen the past less than 2 months since Trump took office, that it's been a little bit of a rocky, turbulent time, to say the least. And as we've talked about in past episodes, I think for a lot of the straight population, they see Pride every June. Oh, that's fun. Hey, the gays got the right to get married in 2015. Things are great with them. And really, that's tip of the iceberg. A lot of people don't even know about the history of Pride, and there are still so many inequalities we face on a daily basis, on top of just basic bigotry and hate. So we're going to talk all about how we can better engage our allies. But first, you know the drill. Let's pull our tarot card. So for this episode, we drew the Lovers in reverse, which is a major arcana card. As you remember, major arcana cards signify big changes in our life, and the Lovers is number 6 in the major arcana, which is tied to harmony and reciprocity. It also follows 5, which is sometimes referred to as the conflict number, so this can represent that we've just moved on from hardship. And we also see the Lovers appear on another card in the major arcana, the Devil, which is tied to addiction and self-sabotage. So when we draw the Lovers in reverse, it's telling us that a relationship is out of balance, usually because someone is relying too much on the other. So we may feel out of sync with those around us, and as a result, our communication might feel strained. This card also relates to our self-love and respect, and it encourages us to make decisions based off of our values. And to fix this imbalance, we need to understand what our source of disharmony is. So we need to look within, and once we identify it, we can take the next step and address it in a way that aligns with our values. And ultimately, if the relationship will never be reciprocated, then it may be time to walk away, as difficult as that may be. So definitely a more serious card, something to noodle on as we get into this episode. But without further ado, I am excited to welcome our guest. He is a global lecturer and educator on LGBTQ plus civil rights. Please welcome Greg Baird. Hi, Greg. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your podcast today.
Of course. Thanks for coming on. Like we said before we started recording, I'm really excited for this topic. I think it's always important to talk about, but especially politically now more than ever. You seem to be a wealth of knowledge, so I'm excited to get all your insights for this and share it with the listeners. Before we get too much in the episode, though, can you just introduce yourself to the listeners? Tell us a little bit about your career, who you are, pronouns, identities, all that fun stuff.
Sure. My name is Greg R. Baird. I am a global lecturer on LGBTQ plus civil rights, allyship, community. The list could go on. Anti-hate, anti-bullying. It's kind of everything in the kitchen sink a little bit. I am in Chicago, Illinois, and I've been doing lectures. I started off basically high school. And, if you were in college, I was the person that got hired by your student activities people to come in. So I worked in higher ed professionally and being hired when I first started, and that was 31 years ago. That was part-time, and full-time it's been since 2003. So I made a big career change. I was working at a college in northern Michigan in higher ed, and I was director of student life and was the adjunct theater and acting professor, and just thought I'm going to follow my what I thought my legacy is, and we can get a little bit more into that later. But yeah, so I'm in Chicago, and when COVID hit, everything kind of went virtual. So I do a lot of things from home, and I still do travel occasionally. It's getting a little bit better, but it's kind of interesting sitting behind a computer screen, and I'm very motivated when I'm on stage and doing my talks and everything. And so it's hard for me to be self-contained sitting behind a desk because I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it. So, yeah. Oh, and by the way, my pronouns are he, him, his. But yeah, that's a little bit about my background. I have a unique story, and probably some of that will come out in your questions today.
Definitely. I'm excited to dive into all of that. Before we do, though, I like to ask all my guests today, are you a jaded or non-jaded gay, and why?
Oh, I'm kind of in between a little bit, but probably lately I feel more jaded.
I get it. I think, for a lot of people, it seems like it's a day-to-day basis. Some days could be non-jaded, some days could be jaded. Although I don't want to speak for you. For myself personally, I'd say the past month or so has been leaning more towards jaded on a daily
Oh
basis.
yeah, I'm kind of in the red zone right now.
Well, hopefully talking through everything allyship, community, dismantling hate today, we can turn the jadedness into non-jaded for all the listeners out there. Well, I guess just to kick everything off, you kind of gave us a little bit of an overview about your career. So can you tell us more about what inspired your journey into advocating for allyship and fostering inclusion for the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very small town in Michigan. And if you know, Michigan is shaped like a mitt, and if you're from like a mitten. And so those of us from Michigan, when people go, "Where are you from?" you point to your hand. It's kind of a ridiculous thing. But so I came from a very bigoted and very non-inclusive family growing up, upper middle class, small town. And so when I went to college, and I really feel that a lot of people blossom when they get to college, especially if you identify as LGBTQ plus. And back then, it was just gay. That's all you said. Like my first meeting I went to at Central Michigan University in Michigan, it was called Gay Lesbian Association for Student Support. And so we had meetings that were more kind of politically based, and a lot of discussion about HIV/AIDS because that was on the forefront in the 90s. And also, we had our little room where we met, and it was a lot of fear, hiding and going around campus and everything. So everything kind of started then, and I got a boyfriend. I guess maybe I was a little bit more bold then, but we were the token gay couple that would go into the residence halls and start speaking to students. And then the first class, and I tell this on my lecture program, which is quite humorous. Um, we were invited to one of those required classes to take, and it was called Social Problems of all things. And the social problem class, they listed gay folks, gays and lesbians, as social problems, which I look back now and I cringe. But we were up on a panel like it was Oprah, and so there was like a couple gay guys, two lesbians, no non-binary or transgender. That was just not something that was even in our wheelhouse at the time. And I think our straight and we had a straight and a gay advisor, and yeah, went down the row and they were talking to us and stuff. And I was kind of giggling during that time when they invited us because I just thought it was the most. It felt like it was a kind of therapy session or like a AA meeting where you're all sitting in a row and you had, "Hi, my name's Greg, I'm gay," that kind of thing. So that was my first taste, and I just felt like there was a need um, to be out there and share our stories. And as my life went on from there, I worked at Interlochen Center for the Arts up in northern Michigan, world-renowned music school, theater, dance. And I started the first Gay Straight Alliance under a lot of scrutiny because I was out then and in charge of junior and senior high school boys. You can imagine the talk, when some parents that were not so open-minded knew that their hall director for their child was gay. But I really went forward and got on some local boards there and finding my tribe, and it just blossomed. So, and I started speaking more and doing more. And then when I was at my college in Northern Michigan, I was director of a lecture series, so it got my foot in the door, and I met some really influential people. And it went from there. And I just thought, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And I talk about your legacy and what our legacy is. And even if you're a straight ally or you're part of the community or minority group, whatever, in your gut what your legacy is and what you're going to go forward to do. And I gave up a lot and came to Northern Michigan. I was the big fish in the small pond at my college, and then that got reversed when I came here. And I always say, even like with teachers, when you're fighting for human rights, you're not a millionaire, but you're a millionaire in other ways.
With that being said, obviously you have a strong background in allyship and fostering allyship through lectures, community building. So how do you define allyship, and why is it so important in today's political and social climate?
I talk about allyship all the time, and I think currently I tell people, and it's kind of my way of thinking, is I call people that are allies are co-conspirators or collaborator or accomplice. And I think that's a great way of putting it. It's a sense of friendship, kinship, but it's something not really who you are, but it's being an authentic ally, and it's giving up your power, your privilege, if you have that, for people that are in a minority group, and it gives access to leadership. And I think that's so important right now because I know a lot of people are so frustrated with how things are going. We really have the need to have access to our allies and be there, however small. There's a lot of people that are in remote areas, and I'm kind of in the bubble here in Chicago, like some people are. And we need to understand those kind of communities and what we're doing and how you're giving up your power, your resources, your position to help other people.
Separate from the work you do you have any personal examples of how allyship impacted your life?
I thought probably, to be honest with you, there was a lack of allyship um, at times in my life. And that's why I felt like it was needed more than ever to do the work that I do. I've run into some people. I remember when I was in high school, and I'm still in touch with her actually, a art teacher, and she was my only safe haven I had in school. A lot of these kids we have, if we don't have allies or people that are looking out for us, the kids in school are running, fearfully from one room to another. Hopefully they're not going to be banged against a locker, bullied, mistreated, or whatever. And, she was my source of just peace and everything. And she still is to this day. And, she's a retired teacher, but I've had some of those. I have classmates that I get together with a couple times a year in my small town. And if they were here right now, they would all be laughing because they would say, "Oh," and they call me Greggy. They know we knew Greggy was gay before he did, you know. And they're my allies too, so they're around. But I think some people, from just things that I'm watching, are afraid of being an ally, and how involved is that going to be, and is that going to affect my safety and things like that? So it's a whole different kind of arena that we're in right now, and something we can elaborate a little bit more as we go on.
And to your point, I think for a while, it seems like people, straight allies would see pride celebrations and maybe they'd partake in that. And then gay marriage was legalized in 2015. So it's, yay, things are great for gay people, when really that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. And now you see corporations like Target, who last year had started removing some pride-themed merchandise from their stores, which goes to show they like to benefit from LGBTQ plus rights when it's the popular / quote unquote trendy thing to do. But when they start receiving some pushback, they're going to fold up. So with that in mind, what are some common misconceptions about being an ally to the LGBTQ plus community? And this includes both at the individual level and corporate level.
It's interesting what you just mentioned about, our allies will come to Pride and like, oh, this is great. We can have a few drinks and the banners, and we can watch the boys on the float or the girls on the float, whoever, and then we leave. And then we had gay marriage, and they were all there for equality. And then where are they now, kind of thing. So when you declare yourself an ally, you are declaring yourself as a level of support and a continuous level of support. I think some people say, well, I'm an ally. I love the gay crowd or whatever they may say. And it starts more of action. We have these things called optical allyship, and optical allyship is, and we all do it when it's Black Lives Matter or it's like right now it's Black History Month. Everybody will change their computer screen to something, their cover, or on Facebook. That's optical allyship. Or if they have a little pride flag or progress flag on their desk, that's optical allyship. And then they say, well, I'm done. That's my thing. I'm done. I'm an ally. Well, allies may struggle to recognize their own privilege and how it contributes to the marginalization of others. And that's where the education piece comes in, because as you and I both know, and a lot of people, marginalized groups do not take a break. And our allies should not do that either. So I'm asking the allies, unpack your privilege and engage in self-reflection and education. And we all have our biases. We all have our prejudice that we grew up with or the allies grew up with. And with these corporations, they need to stand up. I know like Costco, United Airlines, there's some that have stood up and say, we're not getting rid of DEI. And I think the misconception about DEI is they're just hiring people to kind of level the field kind of thing. And what they need to understand is DEI is about merit, about hiring somebody of merit that has, the educational, the experience, things like that we want to be fair. And I think there's just been a lot of uneducated choices, and it's unfortunate that these companies are coming up because they also have their hand in the pot, I think, with some of the conservatives and what's going on. And it's like, well, if we do this, well, you may not get our long-term support or money. And it's a sad situation. It really is. You want somebody that's bold and proud and not just there when it's right for them, but when it's right all the time.
I think with the people we surround ourselves with, we have family members and friends who continue having a relationship with us after we come out. They think that makes them an ally, but there's a difference between really supporting and advocating for us as opposed to just having a relationship with somebody. And same thing with corporations. It's great to say that you value diversity, but what's the action behind that? Changing your logo at Pride to a rainbow or having that rainbow flag on your desk. They're great symbols, but where's the action behind that? And like you said, there's an educational piece that has to be done there. So how can LGBTQ plus individuals help allies recognize and dismantle their own biases to create stronger partnerships?
I think you got to understand your background, where you came from, and what your current educational and what was instilled to you. I call it brainwashing. I was brainwashed as a kid on different kinds of communities, all communities, by the way, that were different than being a cis white male upper middle class. So you have to first recognize that and dismantle that. And you do that by show up to people in solidarity, presentations, lectures, planning committees, things like that. The other thing is to get to know your colleagues. We live in a world right now where we really don't understand one another. It's universal. And so we need to share our stories. And one of my main things in my lecture program is sharing our stories, because our stories changes hearts and minds and policies. So that dismantles a lot of things that we've gone through for our allies. It breaks down a lot of barriers so we can talk, and we find out that we're more alike than we are different. But then the difference does not need to be something that's negative. Our differences need to be celebrated as long as they're a positive difference. So it's a lot of collaborating and being there for each other, building bridges, and don't be afraid to respond to behaviors that you may see are past prejudice. Voice them, be heard, and an ally just doesn't let things go. Some things can be very uncomfortable to talk about. I've had discussions with people, even my own family, had a lot of prejudices, and there's kind of this curve where there's people, and this is the problem that happens on social media a lot. And people get angry, like, wow, they're not on my team, they're not on my side. And we have this curve where there's people that you can reach out to, and there's people that you can't. And then there's people that kind of in that learning curve that's in the middle that are there, like, educate me, I want to know more. And don't go after the ones, we know the people that we see on Facebook, Instagram, wherever it may be, TikTok, that are not on our side. Don't waste your time and energy on that, because we have a tendency as human beings that if we have all this great stuff going on and you have this one bad moment or one bad thing that's said to you or one bad thing that you've seen, what are you going to concentrate on the rest of the day? Not all this good stuff that's happening. You're going to concentrate on this thing that ticked you off or you saw or you couldn't, encourage somebody to be a better person, or change their behavior, change, what they may be doing. So you got to dismantle your own biases. And we've had that, as the LGBTQ plus community, we've had those instilled with us for a long time, and we need to do better. We need to really do better.
With that in mind, I did want to circle back to the piece you brought up about DEI and how it's merit-based. Years ago, I had worked for a company that wanted to do these roundtables every month to promote marginalized voices. So every month it corresponded to a different diversity event. This wasn't done from an office of DEI or at, an HR level. It was just one of the larger organizations within the company who did it within their own organization. So employees that fell in that organization. And for Pride Month, I usually helped coordinate these. So for Pride Month, I was working on coordinating this. And they needed speakers at a certain level. So because they were leadership roundtables, it couldn't just be any employee. It had to be an employee at a certain job classification. And they had their 4 identified speakers for this who identified openly as being part of the LGBTQ plus community. However, as we were planning it out, one of those people actually was not at the job level that was high enough for to be considered for that. And they did so much advocacy work. They had intersecting identities, so they could really bring a much deeper, more nuanced perspective to this conversation, but they weren't high enough level for this. And there was nobody else that the people planning this at the company level knew of that was of that job level and of an LGBTQ plus identity. So they came back to me and said, well, can we have somebody at that job level as a straight ally speak, since there's somebody that's not at that level within the LGBTQ plus community? And in my mind, I'm reading this email to me and I'm saying, do you not see the hypocrisy or the problem? That is the problem. There's not enough people promoted to this job level to have their voices heard throughout the company. It's not just about hiring LGBTQ plus talent. It's, are you giving them the same opportunities to develop their career as you would a straight cisgender white man? So with that in mind, what are some specific strategies allies can use to create a more inclusive and accepting atmosphere in their workplaces and communities?
Well, I get this question a lot, and I always tell people, so you're probably referring to like an ERG group, employee resource group, those kinds of things. A lot of those have been eliminated now. So I think we need to come together now. Those DEI programs are no longer in your workplace. You still can get together with your colleagues that are there. Bring in the lectures, bring in other people, have certain days or certain things that you can have discussions. If you're not can have those at work, do it outside of work. Find your sense of community, whether it's over like a cocktail or appetizers or something, later. But I think the employees need to show up for one another in solidarity and say, okay, you've gotten rid of DEI, but we're still going to embrace our fellow employees and be there in solidarity. So like company, community events, presentations, planning, and not only know your colleagues that are at work, but foster those friendships that are there outside of work as well. Like I've said earlier, we live in fear because we're not communicating. And if you don't understand non-binary or a transgender person, have a conversation with somebody that is. If there's a person at work that is being looked over because maybe of color, how awful is that? or because of how they identify, have a conversation with them, get them in the mix of things in your workplace, and share your missions together on allyship is the most important. Not everybody's at the same level as everybody else. Not everybody needs to be going to a pride parade and standing on a float. Some people, are happy to do their own part. Learn the individual skills of other people at work. When the opportunity arises, have them join in. If you're having these breakout sessions or breakout kind of things that they're doing on working on individual skills or individual kind of collaborating and planning, include people. That's the best way of doing it. And it breaks down those barriers, it breaks down the walls of people at your work. I've seen that happen firsthand. I saw that when I worked at a pretty conservative college when I was in northern Michigan. And, there was, again, that curve that I talked about. Some people are like, I don't want to hear about it, but reach out to the ones that can, and you can break down a lot of those walls and mobilize a lot of people for equality and inclusion in your workplace. Have that always blend over into your community, though. It's not just the workplace, but have it blend over into the community.
And to your point of kind of going back to the education and engaging allies, we talked about how, some people have incorrectly assumed, oh, things are fine for LGBTQ plus people. Marriage equality was passed in 2015. I have a relationship with somebody who's LGBTQ plus. So because I accept them, that means I'm an ally. And that's obviously not the case. So in my own life, personally, some of the people around me, I've tried to get them more engaged in some LGBTQ plus issues. So for my family for Christmas this year, as part of their Christmas gift, I got everybody an HRC Human Rights Campaign window decal. One, buying that the proceeds goes to their cause. And then two, obviously it's a symbol, but it's at least something to kind of get them showing that, hey, they support equality. And I've also, especially as some of the political turmoil has been going on, I've been sharing articles and group chats with them about like, hey, this is what's going on, because a lot of times I feel LGBTQ plus issues don't always bubble up to the headline news as other topics like the economy. And I think they get a little annoyed sometimes with it. But in my mind, I'm like, well, if I'm being bogged down by this 24/7, like I'm going to share the misery with you so you're aware. But those are just two small steps. I'm wondering, besides that, are there any other actionable ways we as LGBTQ plus people can educate the allies in our life, especially to inspire them to advocate for change in the face of opposition?
Invite them to festivals and events and films and lectures, things like that. To talk about other communities. I also feel that some people within our own community, the LGBTQ plus community, are checked out. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I've seen an influx of a lot of youth, LGBTQ plus youth, that are calling the Trevor Project. They're calling helplines. It's a great way to get involved as an ally as well, is be one of the phone monitors for the Trevor Project. But I was talking with him, and he goes, "Oh, I didn't know that what's going on with the DEI and the anti-transgender and the anti-non-binary, is that affecting our youth?" And I kind of looked at him sideways. I go, "What?" And so I think it's not just our straight allies. We need to reach out and engage and talk with each other in our communities. But it's all, Rob, it's all about engagement. It's being there, and what you're doing with your own family, the stickers. I've done the same thing, or T-shirts, things like that. My chosen family in northern Michigan, their son, who's 13, 14, gave me a T-shirt that said "Guncle" on it. And I love stuff like that. I mean, you would think somebody, a young kid, he's male, would be thinking about, so many other things than giving me a T-shirt that says "Guncle" on it. And I wear it all, when I'm up there, and he loves it, and he always has his picture taken next to me. So it's small things like that you think, oh my gosh, does that really matter? Is that going to matter to anybody? Of course it is. Of course it is. So sharing those things, I'm a big sharer on social media with stuff, and I try to put a lot of positive quotes and things that are going to inspire people out there and to mobilize everybody. And I try not to be too like, oh, did you see what he said today? Did you see it's easy to fall trap to that. Because if I don't post it, you can't be self-centered like, well, if I don't post it, they're not going to hear about it. Oh yeah, they are. It's everywhere. If you're a news junkie, you'll hear it like 20 times in one day.
You mentioned that right now, a lot of LGBTQ plus people are checking out because they just feel completely overwhelmed by everything going on, and rightfully so. So, what advice would you have for those individuals who feel discouraged by this systemic hate and bigotry we've been witnessing, but still want to build stronger relationships with allies?
What I tell everybody right now, number one, is protect your peace. We all need to do that. That's the key thing going into the next 4 years, however long it's going to be. Protect your peace. So if you're feeling discouraged, do what you can, your part, that you feel safe also in getting allies, being together. We all need to look out for one another. We all need to be very curious of our surroundings and protective and being there. It's a hard time because I think maybe some allies are feeling that they should I be an ally right now because it maybe for the safety of my family or my safety or whatever it may be. Do what you can that you feel comfortable with, but being an ally is not always comfortable. So you got to kind of stretch the point. Like you and I both know, and our community knows that we are faced with things every single day that long term, if you give two damns about the world we live in, you got to go forward, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to have days that are frustrated, and we're going to be discouraged. So hate is out there. How you ingest all that and going forward, you can shake your head, you can be mad about it, can ruin your day. Don't let it do that. Protect your peace. Do what you can that's going to create and give somebody a moment in their day that's going to be a lot better in going forward. I mean, we have our interest groups, we have schools, we have colleges, we have other things, people at work. We just need to include a lot of people. Not all the time is done by a text. Face-to-face interaction, if you can do it, is fantastic. It's more memorable, it's there, and it could be something very small to a gathering to a very political social movement. But again, have those allies with you and be safe what you're doing. Everybody needs to look out for one another. Even planning travel for myself this year, I'm more careful than ever where I'm at. And, I have people that love me that's like, are you all right? Are you doing okay? Are you going up there? That kind of thing. So you just try not to be discouraged by everything in the face of opposition because it's there. I personally don't feel that this is going to continue for 4 years. This is I could be wrong, but I have this gut feeling that all this craziness that we're experiencing right now, I don't see it lasting as long as we think it's going to.
I certainly hope so. And it seems like politically, there's always this pendulum where it's swinging forwards and backwards. We saw it swing backwards with the Reagan administration and then start moving forward a little bit with the Clinton administration, backwards with Bush, and then, forward with Obama. So I think to your point, I'm hoping that we've kind of reached the peak of that backward swing and that soon we'll be swinging back in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
We talked a lot today about what allyship is, how we as LGBTQ plus people can engage our allies, but kind of wrapping things up here, if there's one message you'd like allies to take away from this conversation, what would it be?
Be there for other people. Share your stories. Like I said, stories changes policies, laws. Unpack your privilege, whatever it may be. Engage in self-reflection. Education is the key. Education is the key, and be there for one another. Check in with one another is a great message to have in going forward. We're disconnected. We're so tied up with what app we're using, our cell phones, things like that. Check in with people, see how they're doing, and gather your tribe, gather the people around you, and gain those forces and things and reflection. And remember that we don't take breaks. An ally doesn't take breaks. And an ally should call things out if they don't seem right. But again, going back you have to be very careful of your safety and your peace as well.
And connecting it back to the tarot, the lovers in reverse, this is signaling that there may be a relationship in our life that's out of balance. And I think this really connects to what we talked about today. For a lot of straight people, after marriage equality was passed in 2015, they thought everything was equal for LGBTQ plus people. So yay, let's get drunk at Pride, and that's that. And that's not really the case. And I think there's an imbalance there where for a long time, allies wanted to have their fun with us at Pride. And, we see corporations like Target who enjoyed making money off of the LGBTQ plus community through their Pride merchandise, who when times get tough, they're not showing up. So needless to say, there's an imbalance there. And while we may want to be angry and scream and shout and just get mad, we can't let our strained communication with those people we have relationships with keep us from pushing forward. We need to use this as an opportunity to really identify what's causing this disharmony and find ways to educate those people. It's not always easy work, but if we want to mend those relationships and find that balance again, we need to come to them with our personal stories, let them know how these things affect us, and really push them for their support. And at the end of the day, they still may not see eye to eye with us, and that's extremely frustrating. But we need to remember to make decisions and align ourselves with our values. So if in the scenario of these difficult relationships, you're not able to achieve that balance because the other person or corporation is unwilling to reciprocate despite the work we're putting in, we may have to make the difficult decision to walk away. And while that can be scary, it's how we grow. And wouldn't you rather surround yourself with people who are supporting your equality, who want to see you thrive and have equal rights, than people who are always going to say, I don't know about that, or when push comes to shove, aren't going to take action? So let's reassess those relationships, address any imbalance, and work to cultivate a thriving community through engaging our allies. Greg, thank you so much for coming on today. This was a great conversation. I know things have felt gloomy lately, but after talking with you today, I am feeling inspired and optimistic. So hopefully there is some, sun on the horizon there. Before we wrap up here, can you tell listeners where they can learn more and connect with you?
Sure. So I'm on, I have a Linktree account, but if you look on social web, just type in Gregor Speaks. I'm on Speaker Hub, booking agency. Let's Engage is another agency of mine, Speakers Inc. And then I'm on Facebook. No hate. We'll see how long that's going to last. I'm on Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel that I post my blogs 3 times a week. And I just posted one earlier, and those are fun and informative. And then I also do the whole TikTok thing as well in Blue Sky. So it's a lot. I need somebody to help me because it's a lot of stuff to manage all the time. I mean, you should know that with your podcast and everything you do, but it seems like it's another job. But that's where you can find me. Reach out to me. Anything that you were curious about that I spoke. My website is gregorbaird.com. You can check out all my stuff there and send me a message. There's some links on some human rights groups and things that are really of support. I do a lot of work with HRC, the Matthew Shepard Foundation, the Trevor Project. So those are my go-to people. So reach out to me. I'd like to hear from your listeners what they heard today.
Definitely. Be sure after listening to this to go check out Greg. I'm sure there's tons of resources there to help with engaging your allies. Also, maybe send every straight person you know this episode after listening. I'm not saying that to bolster my download numbers, but just to get the word out there, because I think it really does raise awareness that there is a lot that we're facing as a community that largely the straight community doesn't realize. So I think this could be a way to help start some conversation as well. And Greg had a ton of great insights to share. So be sure to share this episode. As for the podcast, you know the drill. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, rob@ajadedgay.com. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 5 stars only. I greatly appreciate it. For more information on this topic, episode resources, links to merchandise, socials, blog posts, all that fun stuff, you can visit the website, ajadedgay.com. You can connect with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, SoundCloud, and YouTube @ajadedgaypod. You can follow me personally, Rob Loveless, on Instagram @Rob_Loveless. Also, if you're feeling generous, you can support the podcast on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. That gets you instant access to episodes ad-free, a day early, plus exclusive monthly bonus content. Or if you just want to access those monthly bonus episodes, you can purchase them for $3 each. And if you're scared of commitment, don't worry, I get it. You can make a one-time donation for any dollar amount on Buy Me a Coffee, and both the Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee are @AJadedGayPod. And remember, every day is all we have, so you gotta make your own happiness. Bye!